Maitri sir, namaste sir. Good afternoon. Sir, you are not audible, sir.
Yeah, namaste.
Namaste, sir.
Yeah. So we'll start dot 3 o'clock.
Yes, sir. 3 or 2-3 minutes.
Okay, fine.
Nepali sir, namaste sir. Good afternoon.
Namaskar. Good afternoon. I am at your disposal now.
Yes.
Namaskar, sir.
Namaskar, Maitri sir. Namaskar. Namaskar, sir.
Namaskar, sir. ಎಲ್ಲ ಆರಾಮ್ರಿ ಸರ್?
ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿದ್ದೀವಿ ಸರ್. ಸಣ್ಣ ಊರಾಗಿದ್ದೀವಿ ಗದಗ್ನಲ್ಲಿ.
ಗದಗ್, ಯಾ.
ನಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ವಿಶೇಷ ಸ್ವಗ್ರಾಮ ಫೆಲೋಶಿಪ್ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಟ್ರೈನಿಂಗ್ ನಡೀತಾ ಇದೆ 9 ದಿವಸದ್ದು. We have devised a new fellowship program for villagers.
Oh, great. Correct.
1800 ಹಳ್ಳಿಯಿಂದ ಬಂದಿದೆ ಫೆಲೋಶಿಪ್ ಅಪ್ಲಿಕೇಶನ್.
ಬಹಳ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಪಾಪ್ಯುಲರ್ ಇದೆಯೋ ಏನು? ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟಿಂಗ್ ಶುರು ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ?
ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ 148 ಆರಿಸಿದೀವಿ.
ಓಕೆ, ಗ್ರೇಟ್.
100 ಜನಕ್ಕೆ 9 ದಿವಸದ ಟ್ರೈನಿಂಗ್ ಕರೆದಿದ್ದೀವಿ. ನಾಳೆ ಲಾಸ್ಟ್ ಡೇಟ್. ನಾಳೆ ಆದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ 75 ಸೆಲೆಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ.
ಗುಡ್. ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ಇನ್ಕ್ಲೂಸಿವ್ನೆಸ್, ರೂರಲ್ ಯೂತ್ ಇನ್ಕ್ಲೂಸಿವ್ನೆಸ್ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿದೆ ಸರ್ ಪ್ರೋಗ್ರಾಮ್. ಹೌ ಟು ಇನ್ವಾಲ್ವ್ ರೂರಲ್ ಪೀಪಲ್ ಇನ್ ದ ಮೇನ್ ಸ್ಟ್ರೀಮ್. ಇಲ್ಲ ಸರ್, ನಿಮ್ದು ಮ್ಯೂಟ್ ಆಗಿದ್ದೀರಿ ಸರ್.
ಆ ಹಳ್ಳಿಯವರೇ ಅಪ್ಲೈ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು ಸರ್.
ಅದೇ ಓನ್ಲಿ ಫಾರ್ ರೂರಲ್.
ಹೌದು. ಅಂಡ್ ಗ್ರೂಪ್ ಫೆಲೋಶಿಪ್ ಇದು.
ಗ್ರೇಟ್. ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ ಸರ್. ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ ವೈದ್ಯ ಸುಬ್ರಹ್ಮಣ್ಯಂ, ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ ಸರ್. ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ.
How are you, sir?
I am fine, sir. How are you, sir?
Good.
Oh, great.
So how's IIM there, the new one there?
Sir, doing well. Your visit is due. You must visit from Tanjore to Nagpur. You have to make a visit.
Definitely.
Vaidya sir, namaste sir. Good afternoon.
Namaste, madam. How are you?
I'm fine, sir. Doing good. Thank you. Sir, we shall start in another 2 or 3 minutes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes. Please take your own time, but leave us at 4:30. The output time is fixed.
Yes.
How's Maitri sir?
ಹೌದೌದು ಸರ್.
Subramaniaji, namaskar.
Namaste. How are you, sir?
Fine. I told the cutoff time of 4:30. You can start at any time.
ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ ಗೌರೀಶ್ ಅವರಿಗೆ.
Sir, namaste. Chatpalli sir, namaste. Vaidya sir, namaste.
Namaste. How are you, sir?
Namaskar.
Yeah, doing good, sir. Doing good.
ನಿರ್ದೇಶಕರಿಗೆ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ.
Namaste.
ಪದ್ಮಾವತಿ ಅವರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ.
Namaste, sir. Miss Dharni, are we ready to start?
Yes, ma'am. We
Another
shall
2
ma'am,
minutes, we are going to start, madam. 2
Yeah.
minutes.
How many have registered, Dr. Gaurisha?
Yeah, registration was more than 600. We expected around 200, at least 250. The number seems to be less now, around 50 plus are there. I think
They will join. They
they
will
will
wait.
join. Normally, this is the trend. Another 15 minutes, it will definitely increase. That is what the normal we observe in CESS talk.
But you're not giving it in YouTube, no? Live YouTube.
YouTube live is also there, sir.
Oh, link is not there. So people are asking whether they could watch. Okay, no problem.
Dharani, we will start. Dharani.
There is already one chat saying, please start
Yes.
the program.
Yes, sir. We shall start, sir. Okay. Namaste and a very good afternoon to all. On behalf of the President of CESS, Professor M.K. Sridhar, Secretary, Executive Council and members of CESS and the team CESS, I heartily welcome our beloved panelists, the dignitaries, participants, ladies and gentlemen, for today's interactive session on draft UGC, setting up and operation of campuses of foreign higher educational institutions in India, Regulations 2023. That's a part of CESS Talk series. So let us begin the session by offering our humble pranams to the Almighty with the shloka. Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurme Deva Sarva Karyeshu Sarvada. Thank you. Firstly, I just want to give a short introduction of our CESS Talk series. CESS has always been engaging with the stakeholders of education, such as policymakers, universities, colleges, academicians, researchers, teachers, etc., to realize its vision of social transformation through and with education. In endeavor, CESS Talk series is one such initiative to draw the attention of the stakeholders and the education fraternity on various trending topics and issues in the education sector through talks from the experts. So today's CESS Talk is on draft UGC, setting up and operation of campuses of foreign higher educational institutions in India, Regulations 2023 that's released by UGC. It's a legislative framework to allow top global universities to operate in India as envisaged in NEP 2020. The main objective of the regulations is to facilitate smooth entry of foreign higher educational institutions into India. Though it is expected to raise the standards of education in India, there are both advantages and disadvantages. And there are debates among the education experts in allowing the entry of these foreign universities in India. So here we are to gain more insights on the same. So I'm very much privileged to welcome our key panelists for today's CESS Talk. We have with us Dr. S. Vaidya Subramaniam, Vice Chancellor and Tata Sons Chair Professor of Management, Shastra Deemed University, Tanjavur. We also have Dr. Bhimrai Maitri, Director, IIM Nagpur, and Professor Vishnukant S. Chatpalli, Vice Chancellor, KSR University, Gadag. It is
Namaste.
To have your presence today, sirs, all of you. We also have with us Dr. Gauri Shah, Professor and Director, CESS, and also Dr. Padmavati, Professor and Head Education Unit, CESS, who is going to facilitate or moderate the session today. I now request Dr. Bhimrai Maitri sir to take over the session. He's a distinguished academician, renowned teacher, researcher, and an astute administrator. He's an outstanding leader of management education, and he has performed key leadership roles at many premier management institutes and corporate in his remarkable career. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. First of all, I take the opportunity to thank CESS for organizing this interactive session on very important subject, that is setting up and operations of campuses of foreign higher educational institutions in India, regulations 2030. I think first of all, this UGC regulation 2030 related to internationalization, this is to seek the suggestions from the larger stakeholders. The draft regulation is already in place and lot of discussion, interactions are happening, and that is a healthy sign that the attention has been paid how to internationalize higher education in India and how to attract the good institutions abroad and how to set up our institution also abroad. So that is the main purpose. And this particular topic, setting up and operations of campuses of foreign higher education institution in India, regulation 2030, I would like to put up three important perspectives. Number one, why Indian students go abroad for higher education? This is the first question. And what I can gather, there are three important reasons or three important category of students they go abroad for studying abroad. The one is people, those who are reasonably rich and they want to send their wards to undergraduate education and even subsequently postgraduate in US, UK or Australia. That is one kind of category. They go, and undergraduate education in India currently, if you see the recent figures, about 4.5 lakh students every year go abroad. That is the figure, and this number is very large. Second category of students, those who go abroad, they are middle class and lower middle class students. They go abroad. The reason of going abroad is they give the competitive examination and they get admission and they go abroad for their masters. Purpose is to get a job in US and settle there. That is the second category of student. Third category, Indian industry houses, family businesses. Their kids, normally they send their kids to the abroad, the branded institutions, and there may be a reason that branded institution are, and also the money is not an issue. They send them there, and after studying, and their kids, the wards come back and they will take a charge or they will work with their respective industries. So these are the three category of students we can see they go abroad. And if you see the statistics, management, 9, 10, about 5% students used to go in total abroad, 15%, now it has come down to 13.3%. Similarly, medical education number has come down. And again, the Canada, little bit the number is going up. Japan, there is an entry, but America going has come down, and also substantial increase in Indian higher education. The enrollment is also there. So in this, these three category of students, and now we take up this subject, setting up and operations of campuses of foreign higher education institutions or foreign universities in India, how these universities will cater the needs of these three category of students. Number one, these universities, foreign universities, those who are setting up their campuses in India, they may start twinning program 2 year, for example, engineering 2 year in India and 2 year their parent institutions, say in New York or maybe Australia, Sydney, they may go, and at the end, the undergraduate students, category 1 students, they may get the degree from foreign, even though 2 year as a part of training program, they study here, after 2 year, remaining 2 year, they study abroad, and substantial their cost reduction, because 50% cost will be reduced, and within the 50% of cost, because they have to study only 2 year abroad, and they will get the foreign degree, their purpose is achieved. At the same time, their cost is reduced. Setting up of foreign university campuses, India, that category 1 needs can be fulfilled with this particular regulation. Second category, middle class and lower middle class going abroad for higher education. So there we have a dual degree and also a joint degree. May 2022 University Grant Commission. Similarly, AICT, now we are working on that for a training program, dual degree program and joint degree program. So as a part of that, students can still study in Indian universities or foreign universities setting up their campuses in India for say for example, for about suppose it is a 2 year master degree, they can study almost 1.5 year in India and 6 months abroad. They can get a joint degree or dual degree, or some cases it may be 1 year here, 1 year there. Some cases only 30% of the credits they can get abroad, and they can get 2 degree as a part of dual degree program, or they can get a joint degree program. And when they go for the last leg of the, say last 6 months, they go abroad, and when they get the degree, still they can get the job there and they can settle abroad. The category 2 needs also can be met with this our UGC regulation 2023. Similarly, the third category, the wards of industrialist or business houses, family houses. So any one of the two, whether training program or dual and joint degree program, they can still join this foreign university campuses coming India, and they can get the foreign degree and then they can work in their respective businesses. So these are the 3 needs this campus will fulfill, and substantial amount of money which is going abroad can be that will remain in India, and instead of going a different part of the world. Now this is one part. Then second, what is its impact of setting up and operations of foreign universities in India? Its impact on Indian universities. That is the important aspect. We should look into that. India, we have currently around more than 46,000 colleges and 1,200 universities. And if you look at the engineering and management, some of the colleges, the seats are not filled. And of course, good colleges, that is not an issue, but some colleges seats are not filled. So in such a case, if the foreign university campuses are coming to India and they are setting up and they are operating in India, what is the impact of this regulation on Indian higher education? That we need to look into that, and those parameters also we need to accommodate in this regulation 2030, so that it can be smoothly, we can do the internationalization. So in that, basically I'm talking about what are the challenges for Indian universities when these campuses come to India. Number one, in India we have reservation policy. So how we are going to handle the reservation policy? Foreign university will come, whether that policy may not be applicable to them, and if it is applicable to Indian universities or Indian top-notch institution may be at disadvantaged stage. How to tackle this? We need to revisit this particular aspect. Number two, salary structure of the faculty. Foreign universities, the moment they come to India, and they may try to attract the best of the best faculty in best of the best universities in India, maybe IITs, IIMs, ISER, and some of the top-notch institutions like TIFR and all. So that perspective, now we have to revisit the 7th Pay Commission or salary structure and scale, whether we can also allow Indian top-notch universities to go by the market rate. For example, in US, some of the business schools a finance faculty who is working assistant professor, his or her salary may be more than the associate professor in marketing or associate professor in operations management. So depending upon the market faculty salary which operate in some of the top universities in US, so we also look into that, what can be done for Indian universities for revisiting the salary structure based on the market demand, so that Indian university can play an equal role and compete well with the foreign university campuses coming in India. So this, whether we can go for the market demand or demand based salary, that one has to revisit. This is the second point. Third point is, like China has attracted large number of Chinese professors working in US. They have come back to China once China picked up its infrastructure, and after 1995, large number of professors, Chinese professors working in US, they came back to China and they are building the great institution. So whether the attempt can be made, bringing the top-notch Indian faculty working in US, UK, Australia to India and put them to teach in Indian top-notch universities, so that our universities can be competitive with the foreign university campuses coming to India, so that it will be a level playing ground for Indian universities and foreign universities coming in India. So this is another point one need to look into that. Otherwise, what will happen? Our faculty from IIT, IIM, probably if they pay more salary, probably then there will be a issue with the top universities in India as far as salary structure is concerned. And third challenge, probably what we can look into that, if you set up and operate the foreign university campuses, there may be a correction factor or correction year will come into picture. The good will prosper and bad institutions in higher education space in India, many may shut down because of setting up of these foreign universities in India. So these are some impact may come into picture. Now with this next point, now what are the things we need to look into that when foreign university campuses are coming? We have seen why students are going and how that can be accommodated as a part of UGC regulation 2030, and what are its impact on Indian universities. The fourth important point is for consideration in this regulation UGC regulation 2023 is it is extremely important to set up, say, like in India for industries, we set up the SEZ, special economic zone for industry. So whether we can have the specially, there is a higher education village, or some places, some of the countries, they have created a special zone. Even China, they have created a zone. If special zones are created for the foreign university campuses, maybe probably balancing the big nation like India, 3-4 places, probably that will help to equally not only putting the competition but enhance the quality and also equally distributing different part of the country. This is one aspect. And second, USP of setting up a foreign universities in India is these campuses, their curriculum will be based on our National Education Policy 2020, and also NEP 2020, all of us know that it is founded on the IKS, Indian Knowledge System. So these universities, after coming India, they adopt NEP 2020, and this will act as a USP. Students from maybe SAARC countries or Asian countries, even some of them from America, US, Australia, they come to India. Probably they prefer foreign university campuses in India to study NEP 2020 curriculum than studying in their own respective countries. So this may act as a USP if we properly put it and create a great ecosystem. So these are the few points, and there are also newspaper items, Indian Express, Economics Times, after this UGC regulation 2030. So they have published that top 100 institutions are not going to come. It is a perception based, it may not be true. And they say that the top 500 universities are coming, it may be impact on quality. So these are some of the questions raised in media. However, what I feel is probably after getting the suggestion from various stakeholders and the way NEP getting the 2 lakh suggestions, the gold standard has been prepared. Similarly, this UGC regulation 2030 also, after getting the suggestions, once you put it in a right spirit, I don't think the what people are predicting that good institutions are not coming. Probably India has a huge youth population, and even in America there are number of documents. They say that China and India together make the largest international population in America, in UK, everywhere, even in Australia. So that is where we have market, and that is where I have no doubt that the universities abroad will definitely come, because we have population, we have market, and we have ecosystem, and that question may not arise. That is what my feeling. So with this, I'll stop here, and then I'll take up if any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for your insights on this. Probably with the questions that's raised by the participants and also during the moderate session, we can talk about this more. Now I request Dr. Vaidya Subramaniam, sir. He's the Vice Chancellor and Tata Sons Chair Professor of Management Shastra, Deemed University, Tanjavur. He is an alumnus of Harvard Business School, and his areas of interest include public policy and higher education management. He also heads various, he is also a member of various committees constituted by Ministry of Education, UGC and AICTE, and is also a member of CII, SR and TN, and ASSOCHAM committees on higher education and other academic bodies. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you, CESS, for organizing this event on a topic that is very important as well as contentious. And looking from the attendance for this online event, I am convinced that it's only organizations like CESS and also topics like this generates a lot of interest amongst academics on a Saturday. So thank you very much for this opportunity. So in the next 15 to 20 minutes that I am going to talk about the draft foreign universities regulations that has been shared by the UGC, I will just structure my talk in 3 parts. One, I will just give a contextual background with some data points. And then secondly, the quick analysis of this UGC regulations, the genesis and what actually it means and what it says, what it should have told and it did not say. And lastly, what are the 5 main issues according to me that needs to be addressed through these regulations. Now, firstly, in terms of the contextual background, there is no doubt that this regulation is aligned to NEP 2020, which emphasizes on the importance of internationalization of Indian higher education. Please note the point, Indian higher education. So I will revisit this point a little later. Now, this is true in the spirit, in the global spirit of relevance and popularity, where internationalization is one trigger metric that actually drives global rankings by the Times Higher Education, QS, in whatever form it could when it comes to internationalization component. It is definitely a significant metric. And then, as Professor Maitri pointed out, there is increase in international student footprint that is actually sending Indian students to foreign universities and not much in the reverse direction. Then, as a result of which, there is some foreign exchange buoyancy. In the case of India, there is always a deficit foreign exchange flow. And globally, the share of export revenue by way of education is gaining significant importance. And let me give you some data points to make my statement good. If you look at the global student mobility, between the year 2000 and 2020, in a 20-year period, the total number of students who have left their home countries to pursue foreign education it was 1.6 million in the year 2000 and round about 6 million in the year 2020. And that number came down because of COVID in 2021 and just about started to increase in 2021-22 and is just going to increase as we move forward. In terms of the geographical representation of those countries that were host countries to these foreign students, the top 5 more or less has been dominated by the North America, which is USA and then UK, Germany, France, and Australia. And in 2020, again, the top 5 is dominated by USA, Canada as a new entrant, China as a new entrant, Australia, and UK. Now, Russia has also managed to make some significant gains in internationalization. But China is one country that has registered considerable progress as in absolute number. And in terms of a percentage or a proportionate share, Canada has also managed to register significant progress in terms of inviting students to their university campuses. So if you look at the top 3 countries from another perspective as to how many international students are part of their total student population, be it domestic and international, that gives you an interesting perspective of how the top 3 countries, namely Australia, where 32% of the total students in their entire student population is international. And UK, it is close to 25%. And Canada, just less than 25%. Now, if we put all these two together, let us understand how share of India as a student exporter has been. Amongst the top 3 in the top 5 host nations, and second in the case of USA is the share of India, which means India has been amongst the top 3 countries sending its students to many of these overseas locations. And interestingly, while the majority share of students that go to America has always been China, which is somewhere close to around 30%, India was close to around 19 to 20%. And last year, though the absolute number of Chinese going to America, I'm talking about 21, 22 and 22, 23, the number of Indian students going to America has significantly increased. The percentage of students who left India to America between 2020, 2021 and 2021, 22 has jumped by 20%, while China, it has dropped by 10%. But in terms of absolute number, still China remains the top country that sends its own students to North America. Now, if you look at the type of education that they receive, predominantly it has been in STEM and maybe a significant population for business and management education. So in terms of the global mobility of students, though I am using the word global, significantly it has been driven by 2 large nations, which is China and India. And as we speak, in the year 2020-21, close to over 1 million Indian students have left India for higher education, as against a marginal less than 50,000 international students coming into India. And much of the international students who have come to India, in that 50,000, majority has been from developing and third world countries. So it is in the light of this global statistics that we have to understand the draft regulations that has been put forth by the UGC. Now, I said at the beginning that this is aligned with NEP 2020. But let me get into the second part of what internationalization of Indian higher education actually is the prime objective as per NEP 2020. Internationalization of Indian higher education can happen in 2 forms. One, that foreign universities can come into India. That's internationalization. On the other hand, I also think that internationalizing Indian universities is also an equally important dimension that is envisaged by NEP 2020. Now, does this regulation, which of course is specifically for foreign universities to set up campuses in India, we also have to ask the question ourselves, is there going to be an enabling mechanism that will allow Indian institutions to internationalize themselves? That way, the Indian institutions can also align their international outlook as envisaged by NEP 2020. And not only because it is envisaged by NEP 2020, but also that as much as internationalization happens in Indian universities, there is going to be considerable benefit in terms of the learning outcome and quality that comes out of Indian institutions, which are getting aspirational and aiming to figure in the top 500 or top 300, whatever the top it is, amongst the global ranking agencies. So it is in this background that the first question that I ask myself is the UGC draft regulations. Of course, now the draft regulations is shared amongst the public for suggestions. What triggered, what was the actual recommendations that were put forth in the formation of the UGC draft regulations? If those data points are also available, it would be better to do a comprehensive analysis. Now let's come to the third part, which is the regulation itself. Now the regulation traces its origin to NEP 2020, which says that it will facilitate the creation of a legislative enactment that will allow foreign universities to come into India. Many have been asking this question, whether this regulation is legislative enough, meeting the legal framework that is required for this type of a policy decision that has significant impact on the higher education ecosystem. In my humble opinion, this is just a regulation, which is a subordinate legislation as against a statutory enactment. While the NEP 2020 says it has to be kind of a statutory enactment, whether this regulation meets the statutory value as envisaged by NEP 2020 is a fundamental question that I ask myself. Second, the NEP 2020 says top 100, whereas the regulation says top 500 and still is open-ended to the extent that it is top 500 subject-wise also. Now that again makes us ask the question, suppose these foreign universities which are in top 500 establish campuses here, and at that point of time they were ranked top 500, and maybe in the second year, third year, they slip and they are ranked 600, 700, 800. They become top 500 globally ranked university. So what actually happens to the status that is driven by rank, a ranking mechanism, which itself keeps changing every year? So that's another fundamental question that we have to ask ourselves. But nevertheless, since this regulation is now in the public domain for feedback in the true spirit of consultative and democratic policy making, I think there is a lot of feedback that is pouring in. Many of them have written articles about this. In fact, for the benefit of the audience here, my article is due tomorrow, and I invite your readership and analysis and critical feedback of the article. But the total number of international student enrollment has clearly sent some signals for various policy makers to understand a completely different perspective that I think this regulation is missing. Now, I told you before that in the US universities, the rise of Indian students was significant. For example, in 2000, in the year 2000, it was roughly around 5 lakh Indian students who went to the US. And in the 2020, it is roughly around 8.5 lakhs. And last year, we have seen significant rise in the Indian students, surpassing even as a percentage the growth that the Chinese who went to India. In fact, China, as I told before, registered a fall of 9%. So basically, Indian students studying abroad are outgrowing even the Chinese leaving China. Two reasons: China maybe still the interest level and also the acceptability because of other reasons is also a subject matter of concern. But as Professor Maitri pointed out, China's strategy to internationalize their own campuses in the last 15 years has really given them a lot of advantage in retaining their students to study in their own campuses because they have been adequately internationalized, and also attract the Chinese faculty, the overseas Chinese, back to China to take up their teaching and research as a career profession. Now, the other part, as I told you, the source of funding for higher studies in America, and not only America, in all these top 5, has been predominantly from private savings and current employment, which is around 75% in terms of private savings, and 20% only is through university and college grants. So here again, there is this popular feeling that many who are leaving India, they are also going because of the grants that are completely available there. No, it's less than 20% that comes in the form of university or government grants, but almost 75% of the money that the students are spending is from their own savings. Now, there again, there is a lot of question on the amount of foreign exchange that will be saved. A number of people have just quoted some exorbitant numbers, close to even $80 billion. I don't know where they get their figures from, but even the published report of RBI and other reliable agencies doesn't show this number to be as high as $80 billion. But all the numbers that I have seen so far, the number has been less than $20 billion and definitely will increase as we move forward, because I feel that the proportion of self-funding by Indian students increasing is clearly demonstrating their willingness to go abroad for higher education using their own funds. And there are other reasons beyond just, quality. Quality definitely is one important reason. But, there is this need for experiencing a new type of education outside India, a new culture, a new geography, the way in which there is flexibility in their mechanisms there. Now, these are also other reasons why the Indian students leave their country. And mind you, the international student tuition revenue is one of the most important survival lifelines of many reputed international universities. And I am sure they will not compromise that survival lifeline on their own volition by setting up campuses in India. And that's one of the reasons why these top 100 universities or even top 250 universities might not be interested in setting up their campuses here. In fact, I would like to recall one personal incident. I was part of a delegation, the Indo-US Higher Education Summit, that happened somewhere in 2009, where it was the Government of India delegation and the US State Department of Education delegation in a bilateral discussion that happened in Washington, DC. And that time also, just like these regulations, there was this foreign university bill that was also under active consideration. And I distinctly remember, I don't want to name universities, but I asked some of the best universities there, if that bill at that point of time was legislated by the parliament, will they be setting up their campuses here? Some of the best universities clearly said no. The reason I probed further, I came to know, and it is very obvious, is that, they are all known as research universities. So it is very, very difficult to replicate research university models in different campuses outside their country. And that is why you will find that there is no Harvard University, there is no Stanford University, or no University of Pennsylvania in different states within the US itself, because they're all very vibrant in research, and it is very difficult to replicate research universities. Now, having said that, let me come to the third part, which is some of the issues that this regulations is presenting in the form of challenges. There is absolutely no doubt that, the India's higher education is at the cusp of a transformational shift thanks to NEP 2020. And as I've been repeatedly saying, many of you have been saying that the main highlight, one of the main highlights of NEP 2020 is, of course, the internationalization of Indian higher education, which I feel is both foreign universities in India and internationalization of Indian universities. So the draft regulation deals with the former, while the latter requires more focus, is my personal opinion. Be that as it may, the provisions of the proposed regulation requires attention on some top 5 critical provisions in my view. Firstly, the academic, the administrative and financial autonomy that has been assured to the foreign universities must also be assured to deserving Indian universities. Do we have a regulation that enables the top 100, let's say top 100 NIRF or category 1 universities to also enjoy the same level of academic, administrative and financial autonomy that is going to be assured to the foreign universities? This has to be done to ensure that there is competitive parity by way of a level playing field, and there is no institutional disparity which will make the field very bumpy. Second, the reputed foreign universities that we are expecting to come here are known for their cutting edge research activities, flexible curriculum, very creative pedagogy, and all of those things that they enjoy because of certain geographical advantages that they have. To what extent this can be replicated is unclear if they come to India. And examples of some of the foreign universities in foreign countries has been very limited. In fact, I would say it is very discouraging, especially when I see some data points of some of the foreign universities who have set up campuses in Dubai, UAE, Singapore, Malaysia, and all of that. They have just managed themselves to become glorified teaching shops. If they chose to remain a teaching shop of that nature and not a full-fledged research university, which by the way is very difficult to replicate, then they may not be able to deliver the desired learning outcomes of comparable quality that the regulation foresees. Thirdly, the provision to repatriate the income is something that is questionable, because if you're going to allow the foreign universities to repatriate their income, then they will resort to all sort of exotic accounting provisions, thankfully to some of the best accounting minds that they will retain as consultants, and that will limit the fund availability of those foreign universities in India to expand and engage in various socio-economic development activities. And this is something that Indian universities are doing in large number, whether they are the IITs or the IIMs or the public universities, central, state, private. There is absolutely no doubt that they are actually expanding and are engaging in various socio-economic development. And this way, they ensure that there is a lot of liquidity financing that enriches the socio-economic capital of our country. Whether foreign universities will be able to do that, I have my own doubts. Fourthly, the existing UGC regulations that have been recently notified with regard to twinning, the dual degree, the joint degree with foreign universities, these are all just about to take shape. And I think we should give the existing regulations with these type of collaborative models of engagement to actually mature, so that we are also internationalizing and ensuring that there is mobility of people, resources, knowledge, both ways. So we need to give time for our own regulations that already have a significant international component to mature. Fifthly and lastly, as I said before, students go abroad to experience real-time new culture and geography, and they are not willing to study here in a type of a mini-me foreign campus. They don't want some small facility of a very popular university operating in India. Now, if this is the real expectation of the student, how much of foreign exchange outflow will be reduced is something on which I have my own doubts, because the willingness to go out and study has always been increasing year on year, and that's been our historical track record. Now, actually, I have more questions to ask, but I'm just limited by time. But one thing is very clear, that I am not here to say that, we should not allow foreign universities. With all this as the background, my closing statement is that I am very happy to welcome foreign universities, but I think we should have a calibrated model. How can we calibrate it? I think there are two ways by which we can calibrate the entry of foreign universities. And in the process, we will also be able to genuinely test the intent behind the entry of foreign universities. One, I think we should allow foreign universities to offer postgraduate and PhD programs only for the first 10 years. The benefit of that is that already we have a looming faculty crisis. We don't have enough faculty with enough educational qualifications, be it at the PG level or at the PhD level. Now, if foreign universities who are known for their postgraduate education and PhD education are able to offer that type of an education in India, we will have more pursuing that type of an education. And there is a lot of a talent pool that is available for Indian institutions. And this will not only address the faculty crisis, but also, test the genuine intent of the foreign universities to offer postgraduate and PhD programs and not restrict themselves to the popular undergraduate degree programs, which will not really deliver the type of outcome that this type of regulations actually foresees. Secondly, the laws in terms of the repatriation of the income, it has to be a little tightened to ensure that the financing vehicle actually stays in India and rides within India. That way, the socio-economic footprint inside India gets enlarged by the presence of foreign universities. So with these very brief opening remarks, I thank you again. And my closing statement, as I said, in short, I welcome foreign universities with calibration. Thank you very much.
You have to unmute.
Sorry. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for throwing light upon what happens if the foreign institutions are set up in India and all. We will discuss it further. Moving on to Professor Vishnukant Chatwalli, sir. He is the Vice Chancellor of Karnataka State Rural Development and Panchayat Raj University, Gadag. He has served the state and central government bodies in various capacities. He was a member of governing body of National Testing Agency, South Zone Regional Committee of NCTE, All India Board of Vocational Education, Advisor NAC, etc. He has also served as a chairman, National Vocational Education Qualification Framework, State Committee and Advisor to Karnataka Vocational Training and Skill Development Corporation. He has also headed the Karnataka Vocational Training and Skill Development Corporation as the Executive Director. Over to you, sir.
ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. ಕರ್ನಾಟಕದಲ್ಲಿ ಮತ್ತು ಗದಗ್ನಲ್ಲಿದ್ದು ನಾನು ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲೇ ಶುರು ಮಾಡೋದು ಒಳ್ಳೇದು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ನಾನು ಶುರು ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರೋದು. But for the benefit of all the participants, I'll continue with the dialogue which everyone can understand. Now, Professor Bhimrai Maitri and Vaidya Subramanya have made my job little easier to put forth my points, and I will see that those points are not repeated. My first and last point would be by the end of the talk is I welcome the dialogue, but I don't welcome the foreign institutions to come so early. This is my first dialogue, and which I will end it and justify with what I am telling. So I welcome the dialogue for the reason being we need to go ahead on this aspect based on the alignment with the new education policies aspect of internationalization of education. But when whatever I am seeing in paper, newspaper, and those are writing their points, most of this, the premise of this Professor Maitri and Vaidya Subramanya also and others have said, the premise looks like it's only a financial point that is coming. How much money we are going to save as a foreign exchange by establishing foreign institutions. So if that is the only premise on which we want to establish foreign institutions, I think we should wait for a better improvement in the present higher education institutions in our country. So those who are here and those who are participants, they are all aware of what is the status of our Indian universities in terms of state universities, central universities, private universities. I welcome the statement of Vaidya Subramania saying that we should have a calibrated move. He coming from a private sector, he is little very apprehensive and also having a guarded view of this internationalization of institutions in our country. Now, when I see with the, I don't want to give a very sorry state of affair of what is the situation of our Indian higher education in terms of state universities and central universities on various dimensions, sir. So what is the status in terms of accreditation? What is the status in terms of infrastructure? What is the status in terms of the faculty positions? What is the status in terms of the output that we are getting and the kind of institutions that we have in our country? I don't think globally the terminology of higher education system in terms of affiliation cannot be compared. And there are very few, if you take the entire higher education pyramid, the top 100 or whatever institutions where the funding happens in this country and the institutions, universities which are there at the bottom level. So this disparity is already there. I welcome the dialogue for the reason to improve the quality of the higher education. If foreign institutes are going to set up in our country, simultaneous effort has to be done to see that the present institutions also are pulled up or pushed up, both up to that level to have a level play game in this particular internationalization of education. And we should wait for the reason being, already during 2nd May itself, 2022, 2nd May 2022, UGC has brought a regulation to foster the academic calibration of collaboration of Indian higher education institutions in terms of twinning, joint degree, and dual degree program. Vaidya Subramania also mentioned about this, stating that it's not even a year. And we should see what is its impact, what is its takeaway by establishing this particular regulation in 2022. Now, the second point, what I would like to also raise as an issue for discussion is whether this internationalization of education will help us in improving the quality of education. Is it only to reduce the foreign exchange, or we are going to look at its total improvement in the higher education? There is also, as Dharani in the initial stage explained, that there are certain advantages and disadvantages of establishing or operation of foreign universities. There is also a concern mentioned that it can prevent a brain drain. So institutions, if they are coming, international institutions, if they are coming, and if this brain drain is reduced, does it lead to Atmanirbhar Bharat? And those who are going outside from India, and Professor Maitri also mentioned the 3 classification of institute who are going for higher education: rich, medium, and family business. I categorize it only 2. Family business and rich people, they come under the same category. Only rich people are going to outside country and very small number going in terms of competition. Now, my second point of why I am little apprehensive about this is already in Indian education, we are seeing the indications of commercialization of education. Now, bringing this international institutions, does it lead for higher commercialization of education when the present status of our students, they are not able to pay the fees of the present education? I am coming from a very, very humble, small rural development universities, and I am seeing how the students in these areas of rural India, they are unable to pay the fee structure, and would they be able to compete with the kind of international institutions that they are coming in our country? So contextually also, we should be able to analyze what is our status. And unless we make effort to improve our Indian higher education system, we should be very careful in bringing international institutions in our country. Then the point that was, I also of the same opinion, which was mentioned by Maitri sir also, that is, there is nothing in the present policy which tells about the reservation. What would be the kind of reservation or social aspect that will be covered in this regulation? And there is no mention of this issue in the present regulation. The second point I would like to also say is, I am of the opinion, as again Vaidya Subramanian said, that we should go a little slow in this aspect. Because out of 42 or 46,000 of institutions that we are having, around 30,000 institutions are undergraduate education. We should primarily focus in the initial stage, either post-graduation and doctorate, and also post-doctorate, and do not touch the undergraduate education, which is in the large number in our country. Now, the permission, there are two categories again, which are given in this regulation. Is one about the foreign universities, and the second is on the foreign education institutions. Now, for foreign universities, they have said that the global ranking of 500. But for foreign education institution, the regulation only uses the word as reputed institutions of that particular country. So reputed institution is a very abstract term. If we do not specify which is a reputed institution, then it becomes very difficult. So that is to be also taken care. Then the second point, the legislative framework tells only on three aspects. One is on regulatory, governance, and content. It doesn't speak anything legislation with regard to admissions, examinations, and in terms of admissions, examination, and recruitment. So how will be the recruitment aspect will also be dealt. There are certain points which they have said in terms of recruitment. There are certain areas where you may have to take people only from foreign country or foreign origin. So the regulation should also specify about the recruitment policies in this, which is not covered. Then with regard to other aspect is, I welcome one very important feature in the regulation is foreign institutions are not allowed to do online and ODL mode courses. So already this online and ODL mode courses, how they have created a kind of mess. I do not want to deal on it, but that's a very specific aspect which has been written in the case of this regulation. With this, I just want to throw open the ratio point that how foreign institution is my another question, that how foreign international institutions will help in improving the gross enrollment ratio. So the kind of fee structure, the kind of policy, the kind of program, if the international institutions come here, how is it going to help in terms of GER improvement? Because one of the reason that they mention is the GER will improve by establishing this kind of institutions in our country. So I just made my statement saying that I welcome the dialogue, but we should go slow in a guarded way before establishing foreign institutions in our country. And we should not establish institutions in our country from foreign countries unless we have a structured and well-presented effort to improve the quality of Indian higher education so that we can have a level play with them. This is my points. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for your insights. Now I request Dr. Padmavati ma'am to take over the session and ask few questions that we have.
Thank you, Ms. Dharani. Very good evening to all the distinguished speakers and esteemed participants. Yes, this regulation has created a lot of mixed reaction among the stakeholders of India's higher education system. There is a lot of fear, the fear of being exploited, or some also feel probably this legislation would lead to sort of a colonization of Indian higher education system. And on the other hand, there are a lot of optimistic people who see this as an opportunity to experience world-class education without spending a huge money, and also, not leaving the country. The policy actually foresees recreating something like this, but as we go by what our esteemed speakers have put across, we understand the challenge in replicating such global universities in India. Now, going by the viewpoints, is Indian higher education system matured enough at this point of time to open its gate to foreign higher education institutions? Right? And a lot of stakeholders also feel, will it align with the NEP, or will it contradict the NEP visions? Like NEP says, we're going to offer education system which is rooted in India's ethos and values. So some questions are, how are the foreign higher education institutions are going to integrate the very core of higher education system, that is the Indian knowledge system? How would they, align with the NEP is one question. So there are major challenges, as all three of you have put across. Nevertheless, we are, there are global forces, there are also internal forces. We have to move forward. So we are already on the threshold. As a country, we cannot step back. Globalization is already happening. This started many decades ago. I think India also made a very serious attempt in the early 2000 decades to internationalize India's higher education system, but somehow we did not succeed. But NEP is providing another gateway. It's providing a platform for a lot of reforms. So are we ready to do that? And in that case, what would be the major challenges that we need to immediately address? I'm also the opinion that our Indian higher education system per se has not yet matured enough, to replicate or have the foreign higher education institutions here. Keeping that, we are also looking forward to go ahead. So what would be the best strategy forward for India to go ahead? Say in 5 years down the line, will we be having an ecosystem which will actually bring that parity, access, equity, and also high standard of global education? So what are the challenges that we foresee, and how can we come across? This is a collective question of all the participants here. I'm just, putting across those questions to all my esteemed speakers here.
You want to
I am
answer
of
this
the-
question now?
I am of the firm opinion that we should first improve our Indian higher education, give affordable social equity, which is not happened in 75 years.
Mm-hmm.
Still, with all these effort of 75 years, we see that how social equality, access, and affordability has happened, and keep our doors open for a dialogue and go in a very, very guarded way of inviting foreign institutions in our country. I do not say that we should not, but we should do first this and second that.
Yes, sir. Vaidya, sir.
Okay. Well, that was a very pointed and relevant question. Now, let me just quickly give a parallel from what happened in the economic architecture when we were similarly placed in the early 90s, where we in fact had a huge trade account deficit crisis, where we had to even shift our gold deposits to secure a foreign exchange. And that's when the economic liberalization of under the leadership of the then Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao happened.
Narasimha Rao.
Yeah. So if you take a parallel from there, and there also there was this very serious advice that India as a country, we are good at trading. Historically, we have been doing trading. So let us be a trading nation. Let manufacturing, original this thing all be done by others. So we should not be able to handle the capacity building that is required to be a manufacturing oriented nation. And that was the type of consultancy that was also given to some of the policy makers. But luckily, we threw those types of inputs separately, and as a nation told the world that we have all the resources to compete globally, not only software, but also as a manufacturing facility. And then, there were certain liberalization mechanisms that strengthened the domestic capacity, and after which the so-called globalization that you talked about, which in fact is very limited even today, but it has only been terminologically been overwhelming. But the rate at which India has actually risen to the occasion needs a very deep study as to why this happened. The only thing that I can immediately relate to is the amount of capacity building, the confidence as enterprises, and the freedom that they enjoyed in the business and ecosystem that actually triggered this progress amongst Indian production, manufacturing, trade, and business enterprises. Now, if we fast forward to the current context, it's precisely the same level of capacity building, confidence building, and the type of freedom that Indian universities need to enjoy. You ask the question, are we matured enough? Of course, there are many Indian institutions who are matured to deliver some of the highest quality higher education outcome that policymakers want us to give. We know how to do it, but are the instruments and tools and the enabling mechanisms that allow such institutions to experiment and function in that way, is it adequate? No. So you have to give 100% autonomy to deserving institutions, public or private, both. See, this disparity between public and private has to stop. There are good and bad public and private institutions. So we need to identify the top 100 public and private and enable them with full autonomy. Then you see they will be able to handle the foreign universities at a time when they establish campuses here. And in the true spirit of competition, there will be, co-innovation, collaborative competition, and this type of a coherent synergy is one that will actually improve the learning outcome or the outcome of the higher education ecosystem at large. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Maitri, sir, I have the same question to you. How do we, look forward? What strategies would be best to have foreign higher education institutions in India?
Yeah, I agree many of the points Dr. Vaidya Subramanian just said. So first is, you asked the question, our Indian institutions are matured enough. Always, if you ask this question, we have a big nation and 1.2 billion population. And if you look at that, some institutions, we are at, best of the best to the worst of the worst we have. The maturity level, always some institutions are extremely good, some are bad. So this, any point of time, if this question is asked, the answer will be always mixed. But foreign university bill, we are talking about the few institutions, they are not going to come big way, as sir rightly said. Probably few institutions as a part of entry because of our regulation and even IKS and NEP and all, keeping this in mind, many will not come. But if you look at the history, there was a TQ1, Technical Education Quality Improvement 1, 2, 3. Now Meritorious scheme is coming. Meritorious is going to come. I think World Bank has approved. So capacity building has been done since 2003, a decade, and 2005 onwards till 2019-20. This is a TQ. Many of the engineering institutions, all NITs and some of the good engineering institutions across the country, the capacity building has been done, keeping in mind that in due course of time, foreign institutions are also going to come here to be ready. This attempt has been made as far as technical education is concerned. I was part of TKIP 1, 2, 3. Similarly, if you look at as a part of NEP, 15 lakh teachers are to be trained in NEP to be implemented in coming in 14 years. So that already, the work is going on, probably very soon, starting 2 years, 15 lakh teachers are to be trained in higher education space. So many things are happening, and you see, the right time will never come. If you buy a house, once I get all the money, I'll buy a house, you'll never buy a house. So if you ask me, maturity will come once they come and we compete, and the thing will automatically, it will take its own time, and probably we start competing, and probably some of the things equal footing, as I think Dr. Vaidya Subramanian just said. Autonomy is extremely important. Giving full autonomy and also equal footing. India, you have reservation, they have full freedom. That doesn't work. We should give full autonomy and also full freedom. Probably many of our institutions, our IITs and some of the IIMs, some of the central universities, ISERs, definitely they will make a mark, and probably many training program, dual degree, joint degree, foreign as well as our university will do, and internationalization in two speed starts. But anything once you start, maturity takes its own time. Probably, in IT industry, we call CMM level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this maturity always, once we start, it comes, once we begin, probably quality keep on improving. And as Professor Vishnukant said, so currently we are not in a good state, but many of the institutions, because 80% of our education is in private sector, and probably there is a need for improvement in MAT or NBA, many things are there. But at the same time, if you look at that, MNCs have come in India, and the Indian industry, no, not a single industry closed because of MNCs have come to India. So same way in higher education, good are going to prosper and bad are going to set down, and that is where it is important to not immediately, but maybe we should never be the last one to go for globalization in higher education. Subhasya Shigram is always better, and how fast is, again, it will take a year or two or so. But I am of the opinion that we should start, and things automatically takes their own way to mature and get into that.
So thank you so much. Actually, this leads to a few more questions. Vishnukant sir very well put across that we have to have a very guarded move. And Vaidya sir said, why don't we make our own premier institution, create an enabler system wherein our institution, attain the level of global standards. And Maitri sir equally supplemented the ideas. And most important is giving the autonomy and creating an ecosystem wherein our institution will also thrive. Vaidya sir, you gave a very beautiful anecdote. You said when the um, foreign university bill and globalization was being discussed in the earlier government, and you had a conversation with some of the finest Ivy League universities, and they had not showed any interest to come and set up in India. But probably scenario now is slightly different. Maybe their economy is not doing well. Maybe they are also, looking out for setting up the universities. We are not very sure about that. So that's also could be the reason why from 100 top universities to the UGC guidelines says 500 top universities, because maybe they were not expecting those 100 universities to come and set up. However, looking at the global scenario and looking at the Indian scenarios, why did we not, instead of introducing the foreign university bill, come up with a framework which will actually enable, empower, build a strong capabilities among our own higher education institution like IIT, IIMB, and there is a lot of necessary for even empowering institution like KSRTP universities, which are focusing on the rural development, on rural students. So why is I feel as a student of political science and public policy, I also see some sort of a contradiction here. One way we are not focusing on strengthening our institution, but on the other way we are preparing global universities to come in. So how do we, what should be our intervention, or what should be our suggestion to strengthen our own institution at this point? Any quick one pointer to the policymakers?
I have one
Yeah, so
point, one line saying that there has to be multiple strategy. One strategy will not have fit all for the entire country, because India has got several kind of universities. Now IITs, ISERS, national institutes, all put together will be 100 or 200, whatever number. I don't know the exact data, but it will not be more than 200 to 300. Let the competition start from the top.
yeah, see, actually there are two parts to your question.
They have reached a kind of maturity level. They have raised. Let the competition or level play start from our Indian good institutions who can compete, and parallelly work for the other 700 or 800 institutions, which I am very much open or agreeing to the point of public or private, to improve these institutions in terms of quality. Let their quality also improve, and then open out for a larger level play game. These are my 2 points. By this.
Yeah, so there are two parts to your question. The first part, I slightly disagree with your observation that it is the economic condition, the economic downturn in the US that may not allow the top 100 to come here. And that's why the eligibility is now broadened to 500. No. If you look at the latest data from NCAER, the amount of endowments of the US universities year ending 2021 is $825 billion. If you take the top 10 alone, it is roughly around $400 billion. In fact, during COVID, many of the universities, just on the endowment income, on the interests that they receive from their endowment investments, when interest rates were so low, Even during those tough times, they're able to manage. So that gives you the answer. It is not the lack of financial strength that is limiting universities to come and establish campuses. They have very deep pockets. They are financially endowed with some of the richest endowments in the world. So it's not a question about finance. As I said before, it is not possible to replicate successful multidisciplinary research composite universities in different countries. Take, for example, Curtin University in Malaysia. Take, for example, other foreign universities in other campuses of Dubai or Singapore. Do you mean to say INSEAD in Singapore is the same INSEAD in Fontainebleau? No. They are all mini-me campuses. I call them the mini-me's. We don't want mini-me campuses. We want maximum campuses. That's the second, that's leading to the second part of your question. How can we then build our own universities to deliver that maximal outcome? I have been reiterating right from the beginning, the only thing that you can do is to deliver the promise that NEP 2020 has given. NEP 2020 has promised full autonomy to deserving higher education institutions. That should be the first starting point. If at all we have to make inroads into larger issues of high quality higher education outcome.
I request Mitri sir.
Yeah, I think I agree. Both the esteemed speaker talk about. One is this top institution. You see, top 100 means okay, top 100 is fine, but other than even if you see top 500, there are, because if you look at the Canada, Europe, America, even that matter, Japan, they are the aging nations, and their population, youth population is less. And those institutions are dependent on India, even if you live apart of 100. But those institutions even come to India, and probably as Professor Vishnukanji rightly said, gross enrollment ratio, if they come for the undergraduate education, even for the tuning kind of programs, with their foreign university campus in India and their counterpart in their original native country. So that also some extent helps the undergraduate education, maybe a technical, whatever it is, our top institutions in India, what branches are there in engineering and management. So that will work out. And second, if you ask me 2011 precisely what Professor Vaidya Subramanian ji said, 2011, then education minister made an attempt for internationalization for an stipend. It could not work out because many of the colleges were not ready and all. Finally, it was called a 15-member Oscar Fernandez committee was appointed. It was called off. And at that time, Strathclyde University came to India, 4-5 universities, Sulis came to Hyderabad, 4-5 came and they went back. And the stringent rules were made so that they should go back. That was the attempt to, earlier brought and later on we sent back. But the purpose here is quality of education to improve. The institutions, those who are at par with the top institution, even if you live apart 100, there are many institutions if they come. And it is a big, because if a good institution comes, our Indian institution also enhance their quality. Otherwise, today we talk about IIT, IIMs, but they are best in the country. But if you talk about global ranking, we are not there. Such institution come, automatically we also improve. But for that purpose, as I told in the initial remark, it is important giving freedom, as I think both of my speakers said, giving full autonomy even for salary on competitive rate and equal footing for international and Indian universities, whether it is IIT, IIM, IISER, or even few central universities. If that kind of competition is given, and then probably we definitely improve, and probably we may make a mark and set a benchmark, and there is no doubt we will showcase our institutions at global level. At the same time, as Professor Vaidya Subramanian rightly said, 100 institutions from India are also going abroad. For example, I am Nagpur. We are planning to set up our campus in Singapore 2025. So many will be making attempt. So I think this process will continue and internationalization will happen, and it should happen faster than fast, so that we are not left out comparing to China and other countries. If you look at the global ranking, few years back, no institutions from China were in the list and Korea were in the list, and they are in the today. Some of the Korean one or two institutions, top 20, they are there because they started internationalization, globalization faster than fast. So if you want to be a Vishwaguru and top of the top, we should not afraid of competition. But I do agree that rural India, there are universities, their interest will be protected and their jurisdiction will be different, their input will be different. But at the same time, we have to give big competition to international universities, and that is possible only when we face to face in the same country, same ground, and we attract the good. That is what my opinion.
Thank you so much. Yes. At this point of time, we are having the similar feeling, the feeling that we had at the time of globalization and privatization, where we Indians had a lot of apprehension about what's going to happen to India, whether we were going to survive in the global trade and economy. And today, frankly speaking, we are doing pretty well. So before we close, we'll take a couple of questions. Sir, in fact, we have received somewhere around nearly 200 questions during the registration time, and we have plenty of questions here right now. As you were speaking, we are getting a lot of questions. One question was like, is asking, will India permit higher education institution from Pakistan to establish here? It's highly sensitive.
Absolutely no.
Answer is no, this is not the question.
Okay.
Answer is known to everybody, even those who
Yeah.
ask.
Yes. I mean, to
No,
give it
no,
more evidence.
the regulation
Yes.
has made it very clear. I don't think should be ambiguity in this. There is a very clear mention in this that anything which is not in the interest of Indian integral interest, it will not be allowed.
Yeah, that point is there in the draft.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I'm also not very sure
that,
is there any higher
that
education institution in Pakistan which will come in those ranking, whether they will fulfill or the stipulation.
neither we
can
will
say
go
no.
nor they will come.
All right. I was hoping we will have a center over there, sir.
No, why we should?
So some more major concern is the draft regulation is giving a lot of freedom, flexibility to foreign higher education institution, which is in a way denied to Indian very well performing higher education institutions. The question is why this sort of a discrimination? Like, I don't know, I don't have an answer, but I'm sure if my experts have answers, I request you to answer this question, sir. What is the thinking behind giving so much of autonomy and flexibility to foreign higher education institution when it's not given to Indians?
I am
fundamentally,
also having the same concern, Dr. Padmavati.
see, fundamentally, we somehow believe that, it is something foreign that actually shakes the foundational blocks in domestic soil. And then everybody wakes up and say, oh, we have to meet that quality. But we don't ask ourselves the questions, how many of the internal resources have that capacity building? And if we ask that question, you will get tons of answers that tell you that there are many institutions that have that capacity. Only thing, the policy has not triggered or identified or encouraged or motivated adequately such institutions. I'll give you one interesting statistic. When the North American universities and also UK, they wanted to increase the tuition fee of the in-state students. There was massive resistance. Highways were blocked. Policemen were like, they were actually spraying pepper guns on students and everything, saying that no, you cannot increase the tuition fees for in-state students. Now, the pressure of the foreign universities at that point of time was so high that, they are the ones, as I told you before, they rely so much on international tuition fee revenue, and they will never do anything that will compromise on that. So they will not come and just open campuses that will cannibalize their tuition fee revenue of those students who will come home. Thirdly, you said, why is that this is not happening? Fundamentally, we have to come out of the hangover effect that we need a foreign partner to wake us up and tell us, you can do better. We know that ourselves.
I think, ma'am, I fully agree. If you look at ISB Hyderabad, just I'll give one example. ISB Hyderabad is a living example. People from US, Spain, different part of the world, they came. ISB started 2004, even though it has its own law of land approval and all those issues are there. They don't give the degree, just to give the certificate, charging 38 or 40, whatever the lakh fees, but they attracted large number of international students, and they also stood out in the global ranking. They proven, as Professor Vaidya Subramaniam rightly said, it is a living example, and we can do on our own. But that mindset has to change, and autonomy has to be given. Currently, IIMs have been given full autonomy as per the Act. Similar kind of autonomy should go to IITs and other institutions. I don't think we are, lagging behind any international universities, and we can basically set a new benchmark, new journey through this. So there are many examples, and for example, I tell you, Madrid, one girl, lady took admission to ISB, and she started her own business here. People Matters magazine she started, and she is living here. She married Indian, and she became Indian as a part of ISP. So there are some examples, and our own institutions have done well, and the branding purpose, initially they collaborated all the top universities. Now ISB has its own faculty.
So thank you so much. We have already hit our.
Madam, I just want to make
Yes,
one
sir.
small
Yes, sir.
observation. This
Yes,
is just
sir.
my closing remark. First
Yes.
of all, now that this WTO and GATT is getting a little irrelevant, because after COVID and Ukraine, anybody who talks about WTO or GATT, they are completely intellectually cut off from the geopolitics. But having said that, if you look at when GATT or WTO was at the primacy of global policy making, education was in the penultimate list of prioritized services that had to be internationalized or globalized. So even at that point of time of WTO and GATT being so active, education as a service was way down the list. So what is the urgency in bringing that top, and that too at a time when WTO and GATT is totally irrelevant today? So just ask the question yourself.
Sir, but
I have a last
yes,
point
sir.
to make, Padmavati, saying
Yes,
that
sir.
giving the compliments to CESS is a very important thing. All the speakers have said it. Having said, I request the organizers to send all our opinion in terms of suggestions and concerns made during this talk to the UGC, or else this discussion should not stop here. The dialogue should
Certainly, sir.
continue, and
Yes.
the suggestions which have come, concerns that have been given, calibration made by Vaidya Subramaniam, and Maitri sirs making point and my points, they should go as suggestions or modifications that have to be done in the regulation, so that the dialogue will continue and we are open for discussion as Indian knowledge system.
Thank you so much. In fact, we have plenty of questions. It would have been nice if we had some more time, but respecting your verdict to stop at 4:30.
No.
So we are very close to a closure now. So, however, as you said, yes, we actually document all the discussions that held. and all the suggestions have come up, and we are going to submit as a part of our policy advocacy activities. There are plenty of questions to ask more. Hopefully, we will have one more chance to take this forward. Now I end here. Over to you, Ms. Dharani, for a closure.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. As you said, there are plenty of questions. There are around 29 questions. And maybe some of the questions have been answered during the discussion itself. So, but anyway, we need to end this session now. So firstly, on behalf of the entire CESS family, I want to thank all the key panelists for today's CESS Talk session. The session was so much insightful, and each of the panelists, all of you sirs, you have thrown light on the various aspects of establishing foreign institutions in India, maybe advantages, disadvantages, and what can be the way forward, and or how the government should go ahead in that case. And also my thanks to all the participants of today's CESS Talk for your presence and making this event a success. I think definitely you have gained more understanding about the setting up of these foreign universities in India. And I also take this occurrence to thank Professor M.K. Sridhar sir, President of CESS, the Executive Council and members of CESS, and also the entire team of CESS in supporting to organize this event. Thank you all of you.
Namaskara. Dhanyavad. Thank you to all.
Okay,
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Namaste.